Well, let's get into this with Roland Paris, former senior advisor on foreign policy to the Prime Minister. These days, the director of the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Ottawa. Roland Paris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, each day it seems the U.S. president relays to the world his dislike of the Ukrainian president, and he's been insistent in also communicating how much he likes and trusts the Russian president. What are the long-term implications of this kind of policy shift?
Well, first of all, we have to just take stock of the extent of what has been a truly remarkable policy shift from the United States. And the meeting with Zelensky was just the latest in a series of events that have taken place over the last few weeks that have indicated this kind of shift. And it started when Donald Trump essentially gave away bargaining chips to Russia by saying that Ukraine would never be part of NATO, that Ukraine wouldn't have the same territory, it would have to give up territory. The United States refused to vote against or vote for a resolution in the UN that called Russia an aggressor. He called Zelensky a dictator. He said absurdly that Ukraine was responsible for the war. So what's emerging is that the United States, a policy under Donald Trump, is clearly aligning with that of Russia. And the long-term implications, it really depends on what happens next and whether this path is continued. But the implications are quite serious for Europe, which is realizing that it's probably going to have to take care of its own security going forward.
Take care of its own security. And I want to add on to that a bit of social media that we saw from Donald Trump today, because he says on X, rather on Truth Social, his own company, that he does not believe that President Zelensky wants peace, that the U.S. will not put up with it any longer. You know, which leads me to the question about Ukraine and whether or not that country will have to accept whatever terms the U.S. and Russia come up with to end the Ukrainian war.
Well, it's a bit of a misstatement to say that Ukraine doesn't want peace. Ukraine wants to have a ceasefire, but it wants some assurance that after the ceasefire, Russia is not going to do what it did before, which is basically violate the terms of the ceasefire and then prepare for yet another expansion of its control of Ukrainian territory. And so, if the United States, if Donald Trump was really interested in moving quickly towards a peace agreement, then what he would probably need to do is strengthen Ukraine to the point where Russia didn't feel like it had an upper hand anymore. But that's not what's happening. And whether Ukraine can hang on is an open question. You know, this war has changed a lot since 2022. It is now a drone war. Most people being killed on the battlefield are being killed with drones. Ukraine produces now domestically an enormous number of drones. There's no indication of an imminent breakthrough by Russian forces in the battlefield, although they're incrementally gaining. How long could Ukraine hold out without U.S. aid? Not sure. How much aid could Europe give? Not sure. So I think it's really an open question.
Open question, which makes me wonder about Keir Starmer, because here he has this 4-point plan now for Ukraine peace, formulated after meeting with Canada, NATO, and European allies. But it does also involve the United States. But would it be better to come up with a plan that doesn't involve the United States? Is it possible to come up with a plan that doesn't involve the United States, considering how inconsistent Donald Trump has been on the issue of Ukraine and where he actually stands?
Yeah, I think it would be better, but the United States has certain military capabilities that are very important that aren't that widely held in Europe. So when they talk about a ceasefire and they talk about providing Ukraine with a security guarantee, what the European countries are talking about is a kind of coalition of the willing contingent that could go in and be based in Ukraine, but they would need the backup of U.S. air power to deter Russia from, taking pot shots at that European group, and also U.S. intelligence. And whether the Europeans would be able to muster a force that would be significant enough at this point without U.S. air power, without U.S. intelligence, that's a much tougher row to hoe. And so I think that Starmer is hoping to be able to say to Trump, listen, we'll provide all the boots on the ground, and you'll be able to get peace, and you'll probably get your deal on Ukraine's minerals that you want. So maybe this is a package we can all agree to.
Maybe a package we all can all agree to. Although, given Donald Trump's praising of Russia, given his demeaning words for traditional allies, is NATO dead? Is it more likely that we're going to have to figure out a world without the United States backstopping the military alliance it helped start?
Well, there's no question that these events are going to lead to a lot of thinking about, who our friends really are, whether you're sitting in Europe, Asia, or here in Canada. And this is just, we're at the beginning stage of this kind of rethinking. I think, we have experienced a turning point in understanding of the United States. Even if Trump were to leave tomorrow, there's no guarantee that another Trump wouldn't come or later, and so this inconsistency will be permanent. But I think that the bottom line is that these institutions aren't dead yet. To paraphrase Monty Python, yes, the coalition of the willing will involve a subset of, if it happens for Ukraine, will involve a subset of countries and won't be run through NATO. But on the other hand, Donald Trump, before the blow up with Zelensky, had said in that meeting that he still supports NATO, and he's also said he'll continue to have U.S. troops in Poland. So, there's no reason to give up on NATO right away, because even if we're not talking about Ukraine, like, there are NATO troops in the Baltics, there are NATO troops in Poland, and NATO continues to perform a really vital role. For how long? Who knows? But for as long as possible.
So how should Canada then proceed? Because NATO aside, for all the alliances that Canada has had, it's not as if any ally has stepped forward to speak out against Donald Trump, referring to Canada as the 51st state and these, annexation fantasies of the U.S. president. Among those not speaking for Canada is the British Prime Minister, asked about it directly on Thursday, or the King. And I know that the Prime Minister Trudeau did have a meeting with King Charles before heading back to Canada, but we don't know the details of that. What we do know is the King extended to Donald Trump an invitation for a state dinner. So how should Canada be proceeding here?
Well, I think that I don't know how literally to take Donald Trump's suggestion about Canada becoming the 51st state, because really that would require either for Canadians to agree to it, which there's no prospect of that, or the United States to militarily invade Canada. I don't think there's any realistic prospect of that either. But, one of the things that Donald Trump has been saying that's true is that Canada and the European allies in NATO have for too long relied on the United States and spent too little on their own militaries. And so first and foremost, Canada needs to go way beyond what the current government has already established as the target for our military spending. And we need to do so not necessarily because the United States is asking us to do so, but as I wrote last summer in the Globe and Mail, we need to do it because the world is becoming much more dangerous, and we have to have a military that is prepared for a large-scale war. And not that the large-scale war is imminent, but it's preparing. It's through strength and being able to deter these kind of opportunistic attacks like Russia has been conducted in Ukraine that were most likely to secure the peace. So for one thing, Canada needs to get very serious about its defense policy. It needs to work with its allies and manage the relationship with the United States. Those are tough things to do, but we can do it. I'm confident that we can do it.
Roland Paris, thank you for this. Appreciate the time as always.
Hey, thank you.